Have you ever wondered how far an impression can go? What makes a comedian's take on a politician so powerful that it transcends just comedy and becomes political commentary? Alec Baldwin's portrayal of Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live became a perfect example of this phenomenon. The impression wasn't just a sketch, it became a piece of political history. But how did this happen? What turned Baldwin's initial resistance into a full-blown political spectacle? Let's dive into how Baldwin's take on Trump evolved, and how it became a defining image of an entire presidency. At first, Baldwin had no interest in impersonating Donald Trump. When Saturday Night Live first reached out to him, his response was clear. No way. Baldwin didn't support Trump, and more importantly, he didn't believe in the concept of mimicking someone like that. He saw it as exhausting work that didn't seem appealing at all. Trump's voice, mannerisms, and constant rambling made it seem like a miserable task. Baldwin knew that to capture Trump, he would have to do more than just imitate his voice. He would need to embody every awkward pause, every exaggerated gesture, and every infuriatingly odd speech pattern. But why did Baldwin finally say yes? What changed his mind? The answer lies in the influence of his peers. Tina Fey and Lorne Michaels, two giants in the comedy world, pushed Baldwin into it. They saw something in him that Baldwin initially missed, a comedic goldmine waiting to be tapped. Baldwin was convinced, and once he stepped into the role, something unexpected happened. It clicked. In his first dress rehearsal, Baldwin stepped into the character of Donald Trump. He put on the wig, slathered on the orange makeup, and practiced the bizarre hand gestures and pouting lip that Trump is known for. The transformation didn't just involve physical makeup. It required Baldwin to study Trump's voice, his strange rhythms, and his way of stringing together half-formed thoughts into long, convoluted sentences. Baldwin didn't just replicate Trump's quirks. He turned them into something laugh-out-loud funny. Trump's voice is unique, but it's also incredibly difficult to imitate. Baldwin didn't simply mimic it, he captured the essence of it, the way Trump reaches for words that are just out of reach, how he pauses awkwardly and stretches for the perfect sentence. Baldwin found a rhythm in Trump's speech that made the comedy work, but it wasn't just his voice that made Baldwin's impression so spot on. It was also the attitude. Baldwin had to make utter nonsense sound important and presidential, turning every ridiculous statement into a comedic gem. Baldwin found the key to Trump's persona, the confidence to speak nonsense with complete authority. Once Baldwin found his rhythm, the reaction was immediate. People loved it. Critics praised the accuracy and the way Baldwin captured Trump's absurdities in such an exaggerated way. But of course, not everyone was a fan. Donald Trump himself hated Baldwin's portrayal. He didn't hold back in expressing his dislike, calling Saturday Night Live unwatchable and slamming Baldwin's impression as terrible. But here's where it gets interesting. Trump's outrage didn't hurt Baldwin's impression. It made it even more popular. Trump's rants on social media only acted as free publicity. Every time he tweeted about Baldwin, more people tuned in just to see what the fuss was about. Instead of shutting it down, Trump only made Baldwin's impression a must-watch event. But how did it become something bigger than just a comedy sketch? How did Baldwin's impression come to define Trump's presidency? Baldwin didn't just parody Trump's voice. He reflected the absurdity of his political style. What started as a comedic imitation quickly evolved into something more. Baldwin's impression wasn't just funny, it became a political statement. Every time Baldwin took the stage as Trump, it was a reminder of the bizarre, often nonsensical way Trump communicated. It was a mirror held up to the man's presidency, amplifying every flaw and contradiction. It wasn't just about the laughs anymore. Baldwin was no longer just a comedian poking fun at a political figure. He had become part of the conversation. As Baldwin's impression grew more exaggerated and more popular, he found himself being interviewed not just about his career, but about politics. People wanted to hear what he thought about Trump's policies, his tweets, and his scandals. Baldwin had unintentionally become a political commentator, and his Trump impression had become one of the defining images of the presidency. But let's take a step back. What made Baldwin's Trump impression so accurate? It wasn't just about the physicality of Trump's appearance. Baldwin had to capture the very essence of Trump's speaking style. Trump doesn't just speak, he rambles, he repeats himself, and he never seems to finish a thought. He often speaks with exaggerated emphasis on certain words, as if they hold great importance, when in fact they mean very little. Baldwin had to master this rhythm, the awkward pauses, the constant searching for words, the way Trump could never quite complete a sentence. The impression required a deep understanding of how Trump communicates, and Baldwin nailed it. Once Baldwin found his voice, there was no stopping him. Each week, his impression became more exaggerated and more accurate. Baldwin took Trump's own words and twisted them just slightly, making them even funnier than they were in real life. He didn't have to invent anything. Trump's real speeches were already absurd enough. Baldwin's job was to highlight these absurdities, to make the audience see how ridiculous they were by reflecting them in the most over-the-top way possible. The reactions were mixed. Some people loved the impression, calling it the best political comedy in years. They saw it as a sharp satire of Trump's communication style, a perfect reflection of the chaos that defined his presidency. Others, especially Trump supporters, were furious. They accused Baldwin of being biased, disrespectful, and of spreading fake news. But no matter how divisive it became, one thing was clear. Baldwin's impression had become unavoidable. It was everywhere. People either loved it or hated it, but they all knew about it. Trump's reactions only fueled the fire. Every time he insulted Baldwin or Saturday Night Live, more people tuned in. Baldwin didn't just respond to Trump's criticism. He leaned into it. Each week, the impression grew more absurd, more exaggerated, and more ridiculous. Baldwin wasn't just making fun of Trump anymore. He was making a statement. Trump's inability to laugh at himself, his overblown reactions to Baldwin's satire, only made the impression more popular. As Baldwin's impression of Trump gained cultural significance, it started to blur the lines between comedy and reality. People began to hear Baldwin's voice in their heads when they saw Trump speak. The mannerisms, the hand gestures, the awkward pauses, all of it became so ingrained that Trump's real speeches started to feel like an extension of Baldwin's parody. It became harder to separate the two, but it wasn't just about the laughs. Baldwin's portrayal of Trump started to have real political impact. People began to see the absurdity of Trump's presidency through Baldwin's exaggerated performance. What started as a comedy sketch became a way to process the madness of the political moment. Baldwin didn't just reflect Trump's words. He reflected the chaos, the contradictions, and the outright absurdities of the administration. In the end, Alec Baldwin's Trump impression didn't just entertain, it helped shape how we remember the Trump presidency. His portrayal of Trump became a cultural touchstone, a comedic symbol of the times. Baldwin's performance wasn't just a joke. It was a commentary on the political landscape, one that resonated long after the sketches ended. And that's the power of comedy. When it's done right, it can become more than just a punchline. It can change the way we view the world.